Thanks for tuning in today. I sat down with Paul Gill. He's the CEO of Lomiko Metals. Lomiko is a Canadian based graphite exploration company whose key asset is the Loutre property in Quebec. It's been a while since we had Paul on the show, so we brought him in to talk about recent developments at Lomiko, as well as some of the excitement that seems to be coming back into the graphite space. The company is now financed fully after a recent raise to do a metallurgical study as well as update their resource estimate on the Leloup property. We'll provide timestamps as always on the video. Just take a look below. If there's a certain area of the video you want to see, simply scroll down the page and you can go to that particular section. With that, let's go to the video. So, welcome, Paul. Nice to have you back on the show. It's been a while since we've had you into the studio and giving shareholders an update. So, nice to see you again. And thanks for joining us today, taking time out of your day to give an update to shareholders.
Yeah, thanks, John. It's great to be back and really exciting times for us right now. So I'm really happy to be here.
So, there's a lot to talk about because there's obviously been a lot of changes at the company and announcements. One of the things I wanted to start out because I think it's important just to always look at the macro picture is the macro picture for graphite itself. And your company has put out a couple news releases talking about the requirement for critical materials, graphite being one of them. And by the sounds of it, regardless of whether Donald Trump wins the election or Joe Biden wins the election, there's going to be demand for domestic supply of graphite from the US or Canada for the electric vehicle supply chain. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, there's always been a steady demand for just graphite. There's about 50,000 tons being used per year, and you go to the U.S. Geological Society to find that information. What has changed is from 2008 to 2019, we've seen a drop off of imports into the U.S. of graphite. So any kind of graphite that's used from they used to be 90% of the market. Now they're down to 15% and probably lower than that now with COVID. But we're also being very watchful and looking at the legislative and administrative branches, which have all been pointing in the right direction. It started back in February of 2019 with the Senate committee hearings led by Lisa Murkowski, senator from Alaska. And since then, what we've seen is the governments of Canada and U.S. sign off on an agreement which would see 35 critical materials and metals and minerals supplied back and forth between the two countries, and that was signed in January. Then, subsequent to that, what you've had is legislative branches such as the House and Senate come up with committee or set up with actual bills that would address this issue, which have now in September, or sorry, early October, been addressed by Trump himself. And President Trump has signed off an executive order asking for the government to focus on changing the supply chain, which has been endorsed by the Senate and the House. And now, just after that, we hear that Joe Biden, the presidential candidate for the Democrats, has also raised this issue and met with significant mining interests such as Glencore. So there's a real move afoot, and I think investors should be aware that this move will benefit a lot of critical minerals and mining companies.
hmm And it's obviously good that it seems like there's bipartisan support on this issue, right? And you're not.
Yeah.
It doesn't introduce that election risk or electoral risk where if one party gets in or one party controls the Senate, the House, whatever, the executive branch. It seems like there's bipartisan support for the fact that the US needs more domestic supply of critical materials including graphite to meet the future demand.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's obvious to me. This is not the first time that they've come together in this fashion. What we've seen in the 2000s is a real move afoot to make America a exporter of oil rather than an importer of oil, and then that led to the development of the Bakken region up in North and South Dakota and Wyoming, and southern Alberta. But that has really borne a lot of fruit, and it
Hmm.
has in fact taken place. So now what you see is that we're going to see a lot of development of critical minerals, and with the agreement between Canada and the U.S., we get access to that market, whereas no one else does.
Right.
So having a graphite supply property in North America is going to be fantastic, and we're going to be able to access the market, whereas others are going to be shut out of the market. So it's a really good time to move forward with the project. And I think that where either candidate wins, we're still going to be having this general policy in place, which is again a really good situation for many of the companies in the sector.
And Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but despite some of these executive orders and some of the the agreements that have been signed, there still is not at the time of filming, I guess today, there's still not really a solid framework on exactly how the incentivization of using the domestic supply of graphite would come. And I don't know if in terms of subsidies, or has there been any sort of
Yeah.
framework established on how that looks?
No, I haven't seen that framework yet. I think they're still gathering information from all of the different branches on what's being used where,
Hmm.
especially with the military. That's a very sensitive area. You can't have the Chinese, who are considered an adversary right now of the United States, a competitive group, be the sole supplier of a material such as graphite. It just
Hmm.
can't happen. You
Hmm.
can't have them having supplied 100% of the graphite anode material for the electric vehicle industry. You just can't do it. I mean, you're going to suffer the consequences if there ever were, God forbid, a conflict.
Hmm. And I believe we've already seen them come out recently, speaking of them as in the Chinese government, kind of threaten the rest of the world with curtailing the supply of, rare earth elements, if I'm not mistaken as well. So it wouldn't be the first time that, with even without a war scenario or anything like that, but just there's that political posturing and the fact that they control the supply of these materials, they can exert leverage on other countries, and obviously those countries don't like being a victim to that leverage.
Yeah, and it's been a 20-year process by them.
Hmm.
It's not new. They've
Hmm.
been planning this, and it's very similar to, a lettuce farmer in Canada versus a lettuce farmer in the United States. Someone in the United States has 300 million um, people to market to. Once they're full, once all the supply agreements are full, they're just going to dump the rest of the material, rest of that produce in Canada. And that's what's happened in China. They've overproduced, and any excess they produce, they would dump in other parts of the world. But really, what they
Hmm.
want to do is develop a highly integrated situation in which they've built mega factories that produce lithium ion batteries and upgrade into the manufacturing sector where we'll make a lot more money.
And so it's obviously been a tough go for the last while as a graphite company. And it's not just Lomiko. I know there's other of sort of your sector peers, Nouveau Mon, Mason Graphite, Northern Graphite, etc. Now, I've noticed that recently, and it seemed to start around the beginning of October, approximately, their prices have started to move. There seems to be more volume in the stock. Lomiko itself has seen more volume, and it actually hit, I believe, an intraday high of 7 cents. So there has been a run in graphite companies. Can you speak to that and what you think is driving that all?
Yeah, I think previously in 2017 and 18, there was a real difficulty in the market because you had a group in Africa, Syrah Resources, which
Hmm.
had come out and said they were going to produce and they were going to supply everyone in the world with graphite. Well, unfortunately, that just fell apart in 2019, and they couldn't produce material that was of quality and be able to be used in the market. So they had to fire sale that material lower than their cost of production, and to the Chinese groups. And so here you have a group that was really trying to go big or go home, and they ended up going home. And so now you have a market which had been depressed previously, but now with this alignment in North America, you're seeing a lot of North American graphite plays really moving well. And I think, it just means volume and price. We've had a lot of shareholders trade in and out of the company. We've had a lot of traders at this because we are the cheapest. I mean, if we went
Mhm.
from when you think about it, we were at 2.5 cents a few months ago, and now
Yep.
we're at 4 or 5 cents. I mean,
Yep.
that's a trade that some people will put in the bank and walk away. They're not really interested in the long term,
Yeah.
but there are people who are buying at this level that are interested in the long term, and that's, I think, a very good sign. And the sellers will get tired, and we'll see a more movement in that side of the ledger.
Yeah, I know Lomiko, and from a comparison basis to its peers, it does have not only probably the best liquidity of its peers, but also the most volatility as well. If you look at the day-to-day change and stuff. So both of those things, volatility and liquidity, are going to definitely attract that trader mentality. And that, obviously the price doesn't really get anywhere if you have a bunch of traders in the stock. You obviously need people buying and
Yeah.
holding more than a day or two to move it. So it
Yeah,
is.
and we're attracting those kinds of people where, it's all a matter of watch and see. The buyers now have bought a good portion. Now they're waiting to see if the price comes down
Mhm,
before they buy their next tranche. But what was amazing to me, John, is that I think that there was an average trading volume well into the hundreds of the six or 700,000s for the last 2 months,
mhm,
and that's very significant. We've had more multi-million share trading days in the last 30 to 40 days than
mhm,
we've had in the last 3 or 4 years. So
mhm.
that means that we've got a lot of people looking, a lot of people being attracted, and on Catalyst, we should see some movement.
Yeah, so let's talk about those catalysts. I mean, it's a good segue, I guess. And first of all, you just recently closed financing. You were looking for 750,000. You got it. Can you talk to us about where that is going to be allocated?
Yeah, I think half of it was really allocated towards making sure that we had funds for 43-101 and metallurgical and graphite characterization studies. So
Hmm.
that's the majority, a good portion of that there. Also, we want to, focus on, I think, getting the word out as well. So we've
Hmm.
allocated some of those funds into, getting the word out in Europe
Hmm.
and in America especially. We've recently seen a lot of trading volume from the States,
Hmm.
and that's very good news. If the United States wakes up to the opportunity that Lomiko presents, I think we'll be very lucky. But I think with more to go in Germany and more to go in US, and more of these type of interviews, I think we'll do very well because it'll also be tied to more activity in the actual project itself.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's obviously good when you go out to raise a certain amount of money and the market provides that. You didn't get less; you got exactly what you were looking for, which is good, which is a good sign. The share price, did take a little bit of a dive when the financing was out, but it has held. So, I noted as a TA guy, for example, the previous area that it was struggling to get through, like the 4.5 area, now seems to be sort of functioning as a support, which is a good thing to see. So I think these are all positive steps in the right direction. To expand a little bit on what you said earlier, though, so some of the money is going towards metallurgy, and another part of it would go towards a updated resource estimate, 43101 resource estimate. Can you give us a little more detail around the metallurgy? What exactly are you looking to do from a metallurgical standpoint, and why is that important for shareholders that might not understand the importance of that metallurgical aspect?
Yeah, I think it's very important to understand that what we're doing is producing a, if we were to start producing, we'd be producing a concentrate that would then be upgraded by a processing facility. So, really, the percentage of graphite within that concentrate, meaning that how much can be taken, how much graphite there would be versus waste material, is very important because the whole
Mhm.
process of processing these materials, or the whole situation is, let's remove the waste rock from the actual saleable material. So we have to test all of that. There will be the ability to crush and then float some of that material. That will be tested, and then the end result will be kernels of graphite, which will be sorted by flake size through a mesh, and that's why some of the large flake is called 50 mesh. It'll get caught in a 50 mesh
Green.
sieve
Hmm.
sieve, and then others will be 80 mesh, and others will be fine. So all of those are important to know, simply because each one of them has their own intrinsic value and their own market as well.
Hmm.
The second aspect of that test is to test graphite. Flake size, as I was saying, is one, but the carbon content of that material. So after it's separated, what is the carbon content? That goes to the actual conductivity of the material and how well it's used in electric vehicle anodes,
Hmm.
graphite anodes of lithium-ion batteries. And then another thing to look at is, are you able to, where is this material located within the deposit as well? So that's very important to graph out, so that you can have a 3D model underground and know where your best material is. So that's highly important, and of course, part and parcel of a larger 43-101.
Okay, so you would be effectively characterizing the deposit based on, I guess, location being, obviously closer to the surface, the better. Um, the the um, the graphite purity itself, the concentration of the graphite in the ore or the bulk rock. Is that
Yeah.
is that okay?
Yeah, essentially, you develop a matrix of
Hmm.
that type of information, and really, in an industrial setting like this, that information is gold, because you know exactly what value each portion of your deposit is, and you're
Hmm.
not chasing around trying to find particular types of materials for particular markets. And you can, with confidence, go to your potential offtake partner, or a group that is willing to invest in, and say, look, you guys are invested in electric vehicle materials. We just so happen to have this much of this type of material, which can be converted to graphite anodes, and this much can be converted to the electrodes that are used in steel making, and the
Hmm.
rest can be converted to um, refra- battery, or sorry, to brake shoes or to lubricants. So there's a
Okay.
variety of materials and a variety of products that can be produced
Hmm.
given each of those types of materials. So knowledge is very key, and it goes to, directly to the marketing aspect of it as well.
Hmm. And obviously, the more of the deposit that is favorable towards the graphite anodes in a lithium ion battery, that's obviously, the best case scenario, correct? That's your highest value product that you can sell.
Yeah, that product is about $2,700 to $3,000 per ton now.
Hmm.
And if you have the ability to produce that material at a much cheaper amount, say, all-in costs of $750 per ton, that margin is really, really nice and
Hmm.
produces a very valuable deposit. I mean, you're able to, the whole point of the preliminary economic assessment is to define a value, a dollar value for the deposit if you were to produce all of the material in it. And then what you do is you discount that to the net, what's called a net asset value, which would be, say, 10% of that. Now, given that, for instance, Nouveau Monde has a larger deposit. They have a valuation of 750 million
Hmm.
at a discounted net value. So imagine that. I mean, they're the most similar deposit to us. So if we could see that kind of development, then certainly our market cap of 5 million would seem very puny to the eventual valuation. And so that's what we're targeting. That's where the value creation is going to be.
Hmm. And so effectively, the metallurgy would really de-risk this project, right? Because the end of that is assuming the results are successful, it tells the market, yes, we have product that we can sell at a good price, targeting these high value areas where you're going to make your really high margins. That effectively de-risk the project, and that would be why that would come first, and then you would do the updated resource estimate. Is that correct, Paul?
Yeah, absolutely. You would want to do it exactly in that fashion. And in de-risking the project is what we're really doing with all of these types of reports that'll come in.
Yeah.
The PEA, for instance, will be a valuation that can be put onto your audited financial statements. So
Hmm.
hopefully by next year, we'll have a value on our audited financial statements much higher than our market cap, and that just equals a value jump for most people who are thinking about these things.
Okay, so in terms of timeline for what investors could expect, you have the money now, it's in the bank. When could we expect, say, initial or final metallurgical results, and then when could the market expect the updated resource estimate?
Yeah, well, we hit the ground running, so we are looking for engagements of the metallurgical group and also engagements of the group that would write the 43101 and PEA. We'd like to do that as one package and have the same group do both.
Okay.
And then potentially, if we can, a group that can go all the way to pre-feasibility, feasibility, and even mine build
Hmm.
and pilot plants and etc. I mean, it's a time to get a partner that really understands the value here and the potential to go for a very long ride with this particular project.
Okay, so would we be looking at, say, Q1 of next year for some of these results,
Yeah,
or
generally speaking, Q1 of next year
Q1?
for the hopefully by the end of the year for the metallurgy, depending on how
Okay.
fast things go, and then Q1 for 43101, and then we're looking at then all of the work for a PEA,
Okay. So
and
investors
that
have things to look forward to here in the near term, like possibly by the end of year, having those metallurgical results out that would de-risk the project, and then the 43-101 resource estimate following that shortly thereafter.
Yeah, and we haven't done anything on the project since July of 2019 when we released drill results. We
Hmm.
haven't been able to. There's been situations with COVID and all the rest of it. So now we're finally being able to produce a report that really defines the value.
Hmm.
As you know, John, previously we have a resource in
Yes.
2016 that's now aged,
Hmm.
and so we need to update that with the 70 or 80 drill holes we've done since then. And those 70 or 80 drill holes will really add a big amount of value. We have the graphene battery zone, which was the focus of the 2016 43101. And
Hmm.
now the 2020, 2021 43101 will have both the graphene battery zone and the refractory zone, which has much higher grades. I think that's where we have a
Hmm.
couple of holes that are well within the 16, 17% range and over 40 or 50 meters from
Yeah,
surface.
long intercepts of higher grade. Obviously, that
Yeah,
it's logical that that would boost your resource estimate numbers in both a tonnage and a grade situation.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the whole game here, and we don't want to be the 10th best graphite um, project in the world. We want to come out of the gate as being the top five, and it's definitely the top five, top two or three in North America. Uh, considering the opportunity we have, we're really in a Goldilocks zone. We've seen recently a lot of development from Nouveau Monde, which is very encouraging. We see
Hmm.
that project going forward, so we can follow a path that they've paved. There is some other groups such as Graphite One and Mason Graphite that are still in the mix, but they have their own issues that they're dealing with. And so I think we have a really open opportunity here for Lomiko to really come up the middle.
Okay. And one other topic I wanted to, discuss because it was in the news recently was the spin out of the Promethius Technologies. So that is an asset to the company. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but the the plan with that was always to use the money from that spin out whenever it comes to the company to eventually acquire the full 100% ownership of the Loutre property. So can you give us an update on how that spin out is going, what's holding it up or when we could expect some progress on that?
Yeah, what happened recently in August is that we are started the listing in Curacao for that, and we've engaged the Dutch Caribbean Exchange, one of the brokers on the Dutch Caribbean Exchange. So that's very good news. It's proceeding, but it has been delayed by COVID, and that's just the unfortunate reality. Some of the small countries couldn't deal with
Hmm.
some of the requirements, and they shut down for a little while. But
Okay.
it has a Prometheus Tech. It now has the symbol TECH Tech in the Dutch Caribbean Exchange, and it is going through audit right now, and will then sign off on a prospectus and will go to investing. So we anticipate that that will happen within the first quarter of 2021.
Okay. And once that listing happens, Paul, and that is trading, does the money sort of, I think the price tag is around 1.2 million was the agreed upon price. Correct me if I'm wrong. That
Yeah,
money is supposed to make its way to Lomiko, right? Or
yeah, any money, the raise will happen before the company starts trading.
okay.
So as the raise comes through, Prometheus has to take ownership of
Hmm.
Lomiko Metals, which is or Lomiko Technologies, which
Technologies.
is the asset that we're selling. So they can't go forward without that ownership
Hmm.
being confirmed. And so that has to happen. Then the payment will come from them. We have, I think, 1.29 coming from them for the sale exactly, and then another 193,000, which is for expenses that Lomiko's occurred. And the good thing is Lomiko still retains 20% after all is done. So of a company that is looking to raise 10 million down there, so it'll have a good valuation, and Lomiko will have a nice asset there.
And you still have the access to the upside potential on that asset.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I believe your payment to Quebec Precious Metals for the remaining 20% of the loot is somewhere around a million one. So this, if you get around a million two from Prometheus, that takes care of that.
Yeah,
Lomiko
exactly.
would get the full ownership, 100% of the property, and then whenever you do your resource estimate, obviously 100% of those resources, the tons, all would be allocated to Lomiko.
Yeah, and that's important, not to confuse any potential partner or potential buyer or offtake agreement group.
Mhm.
We want to be able to control that asset 100%, and really, I think that the group that's vending it, Quebec Precious Metals, is also in agreement that they want us to take it over. So I think it'll go forward very quickly, and as soon as we can, we will do it.
Okay. Well, it looks like things are progressing. It's nice to see the graphite market kind of turning a corner, it seems, or, some of the North American companies finally, showing some life again. Lomiko being one of them. You're able to raise some money, which is good. There's obviously more interest in the market. We're seeing that reflected in the volume. So things are moving in the right direction. Shareholders, I guess, do have some catalysts to look forward to, say, in the next 3 to 6 months. Metallurgy, resource estimate, preliminary economic assessment. So these are all good things. Um, what would you say to someone that maybe is not a Lumiko shareholder currently, but is thinking of buying? Why should they invest in Lumiko today?
Well, I think it's very clear. What we're seeing here is that there's a number of different factors. Number one, there's 15 times more graphite in a lithium ion battery than there is lithium.
Hmm.
So, number two, it takes 300,000 tons of graphite to make a million Teslas. So if you're going to have a million Teslas on the road, you need 300,000 tons of graphite. There is nowhere that we can get 300,000 tons of graphite in the world today. So we need that material.
Hmm.
Um, thirdly, we see legislative change coming together in unison and cross-border agreement between Canada and America on it. So all everything's pointing in the right direction here, and we
Hmm.
see other groups within the market moving up.
Yeah.
So as a retail investor, you have to think that there's going to be other institutional investors that come along and want to invest in Lomiko because they see the writing on the wall. And I think that's where I think that retail investors will benefit is if they get in first.
Okay. And if you could focus in on any particular thing, say in the next 3 months that you're most excited about, what would that be?
Yeah, I think getting the metallurgy out of the way will be the most important thing. That'll de-risk the project entirely, and then engaging a group that will take us all the way to PEA and possibly further would be very, very good. That's the kind of quality group we're looking for, and to have a strong partner will also attract further institutional capital.
So the talks for that partnership, Paul, are those ongoing? Like, do you have kind of candidates already in the hopper that you're in discussion
Yes.
with? Okay.
Yes, we are. We'll disclose that as soon as possible, as soon as we're engaged.
Okay. And I guess one last question before we end it. You did announce, I believe, back in July that you had engaged Kenmar Securities out of the US to possibly provide some debt financing to the tune, I believe, of 40 million. Correct me if I'm wrong. Can you
That's
speak a
correct.
little bit to that and what role
Yeah,
they might be playing?
yeah. I've started a relationship with Kenmar Securities on behalf of Lomiko simply because we need to have a partner that could raise us significant amounts of capital and invest in projects like this that have a real upside. And they were gracious enough to indicate that they would sign off on an agreement with us and look for that capital once we had a preliminary economic assessment in place. And so we have that and other support letters, which are not public at this point in time, that give us a lot of confidence to keep at it and go forward.
Okay, so this is not they're not going to step in like in the near term per se, but you're just I guess you're positioning the chess pieces, looking a
Yeah,
few moves ahead and saying, okay, we need to get these pieces in play for once we eventually get that PEA sometime in 2021 that we have these things locked up. So that sounds like it's kind of going well so far. You're already securing some of
yeah.
those letters of
Yeah,
support.
you work from the outside and work in essentially.
Mhm.
You say, okay, look, we've got debt financing in place. Then you get a group that has the confidence to come in as a engineering firm to build out all of the reports that are needed to get the mine construction started. And then you go down further and you finance the 43101. So we've just done the first part of that, and then the other two the only thing missing is engaging that group, and then we should be ready to go. And then will be no searching around for financing when we need it. When it comes to the next levels, well, we have that in place already. So I think that's the plan.
Yeah, and I that's got to be I would say attractive to any shareholder listening that you kind of have those pieces already in place. So this has
Yeah,
been a good update, Paul. I think we can cut it off here. We don't need to make it any longer, but no, it's been good to get you back on and get an update. There's obviously lots going on. It's good to see the graphite market as a whole turning around and a little bit more life coming into Lumiko. The price is obviously still cheap. The valuation of the company is obviously still cheap. So I guess that's another positive for investors to look at. And the valuation, even with all these these catalysts that are coming and that have happened already, is still, to the point where you're getting in at what seems like kind of ground floor prices.
Yeah, it certainly does. I'm a large shareholder. We have
Mhm,
directors that are large shareholders, and we have a significant amount of people that have invested in the long term here. And so that's what we want to attract is people who are able to hold and let this value develop. And
mhm.
I think that's where we're at right now. Is we're still at the bottom rung of a ladder that goes for a long ways.
Okay, well, I mean, it'll be great to have you back on maybe within the next 7 weeks or something, and hopefully by then, you'll have some metallurgical results to discuss, and hopefully they'll be positive, and that'll be another feather in your cap in terms of or moving this thing forward, right?
Yeah, certainly. Well, hopefully we'll talk then.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thanks as always for your time, Paul, and in the meantime, be safe and be well.
Yeah,
Take care.
you too. Take care.
Cheers.